So who here is a brows before foundation girl? Because that's me. Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. Thank you so much for watching my intro video. If you haven't, check that out. It's just a general depiction of who I am, how I came into the beauty industry, and how I'm here to help you. So to get into today's video, we're gonna talk about some brows. Brows are very important to me. I get a lot of questions about my brows. I get a lot of questions about how someone can amplify their brow to make it more defined, more symmetric. And so I'm gonna pretty much teach you guys all about that today. All the things you feel like you've never heard of or never learned before, we're gonna get into it. I'll be going over different types of products, how to apply them, and most importantly, brow ratio. Every time I mention that, people are like, what? So we'll be going over that. The products I'm gonna be going over are gonna be a fine tip pencil like this, and also an angular one. So one that looks like that. Or brow gels, both tinted and clear. And lastly, I'll be going over pomades and also brow powders. Mine's in a form like this, but they typically come in a compact component. And then also how to conceal and define your brows at the end of using all those products. And then just tips and tricks for different products, whether, how to combat and make them last longer. So all that good stuff is waiting for you if you stay tuned, and hope to see you in the next video. All right, guys, so we're gonna get right into the specifics. So I realized that a lot of us don't know our brow ratio. It's not your fault. Nobody taught you. That's what I'm here for. So essentially your brow ratio is the ratio of your brow across your eye. There's a difference between how your brow looks if you don't have a very equal brow ratio. There's a difference between how your brow looks with the proper ratio versus some people's natural brows. Some people's natural brows are not proportionate to their eye. So brow ratio actually helps you to map out where your brow is supposed to lay, and it also helps you to kind of even out symmetry amongst your brows. So brow ratio helps you to achieve that. We're gonna go into how you measure your brow ratio. So you can do this with either like your angle brush. If you're someone who uses like a brow powder or a pomade and use an angle brush, this is a great way to do it. You would dip it in your product and mark. Or you can use, if you're somebody who uses a pencil, especially a fine tip one is better. You could just use like a fine tip pencil like that there. So I'm gonna use a fine tip pencil today. And we're gonna talk about how you measure your brow ratio. So your brows, the front of your brows, are supposed to start from the bridge of your nose straight up. As you can see, I have a good start there. So my brows naturally start like right outside the bridge of my nose. Now, for the highest part of the brow, which is called the arch is supposed to be measured from the center of your nose out, cutting through, you see what the iris of your eye looks like? Right there. So that's where it should stop, right there, okay? So for me, my arch stops a little bit before, and it really should be like right here. So that's where my arch should be, right in there. Lastly, we're gonna measure the tail of the brow. The tail of the brow should be measured from the bridge of the nose out past the eye and go straight out. All right, so for me, that's gonna be right here. So you see, I would have to elongate my brow a little. Mind that the larger your eye is or the smaller your eye is, typically the length of your brow is going to reflect that. For me, I have a pretty round, a bigger eye shape, so my brow is gonna come out longer. Now this is what you would naturally perceive as ratio. Obviously you can tailor to your preference. but typically the length of your brow is going to measure out past where the length of your eye stops, which would be here. So that is brow ratio. So this is gonna help us to map out where our brows are supposed to land in the three components of beginning, arch, and tail. Now we're gonna get into the most beginner friendly or the easiest products to use. And that's going to be brow gels. And the end of this pencil is actually a brow powder. Looks like that. Brow gels and brow powders are typically easier to use when you're first attempting to fill in your brows and you've never done it before, because they don't require too many mechanisms. Brow gel, whether tinted or clear, is always going to come with a spoolie, and that spoolie is going to pretty much distribute the product throughout the brows. With powders, they're typically not in this form. They're typically gonna be in like a pot form like that, and you're gonna use an angled brush. Take the powder onto the brush, and then with that brush, you would apply. So, I'm gonna teach you how to use these. Even though they're very easy to use, there's still tips and tricks to elevate that so that it still looks polished and clean. What these are supposed to do is they are meant to give you the appearance of fuller brows. So they typically will have brow fibers like this one does, and they will help to grab onto the little hairs you have so that the areas where you're more sparse, you can go ahead and fill in those parts. I wouldn't necessarily say that this is for definition, but for fullness and volume, definitely a brow gel. So the way that I like to apply my brow gel is actually going in first with the same kind of mechanism that I use with my mascara. And that is to wipe off the tip of this first. Now this one's pretty dry. This is a brow gel I've had for a while. But typically products like this, the formulation is really like wet. And to keep from applying too much, I always like to wipe off the excess product so that I have just enough to give me that first coat. And you can always add more, but it's harder to take away once you've applied too much. So we're gonna get into applying the brow gel. The number one tip that I can give for applying brow gel is to always start like away from the front. The front of your brow is naturally supposed to be more like sparse than the rest. It's not supposed to be as full as the rest of your brow naturally. So you don't want to go in with the maximum amount of product that's on your brush and going right in the front. You want to start where you would naturally have more pigment, but I'm actually more sparse right in this area here. So for me, that is actually where I like to start all of my brow products. We're gonna go in and we're going to start to apply right in there. And what I'm doing is I'm just lightly applying that product right where I need it the most. And I'm feathering in the direction of hair growth. So for me, that is upwards. And I'm using that little detailed brush to really specify where I want to place that product. Now, you see I filled in that area, and now even the foundation and the base of my brow looks a lot more defined. So that's why I always like to go in where I have sparseness first, because once you fill in that area, you're gonna easily see what the shape of your brow is supposed to be. Now I'm going to continue out to the tail. Okay, so now we have the middle of the brow and the tail filled in. Mind you, this is gonna be your most natural application. This is not for like super harsh definition or like the Instagram brow. This is for my brows, but better. So now I'm gonna take what's left and fill in the front. So remember, I'm taking the residual product and filling in the front because I don't actually want to apply too much there. I actually want it to be a little bit lighter. That way it can blend and still look natural. So this will be effect with a tinted brow gel. Again, very natural, but obviously it's a lot more uniform and cohesive throughout than my brow without. So it still makes a difference, but it's a lot easier to attempt for someone who is apprehensive to the variety of brow products that are out now. So now we're gonna get into clear brow gel. So clear brow gel, I like to think of as like a top coat with nail polish. Like I use this after all of my brow products to kind of seal in everything, keep my brow hairs upward, and keep them in place. So even though I use a tinted brow gel to comb my hairs into place, I just like to take a clear brow gel right on top. And I like a feathery brow, so I groom my brow hairs upwards and then just take it and boom it down. And so that would be my finished brow. Now this is great for like a no makeup day. Like this would be my brow. And if you wanted to take a brush like this with concealer and like clean it up, you certainly could. And I'll go into cleaning up brows when I get to like the pomades and the pencils. But if you're not doing all of that and you just want a fuller brow that looks more coherent, then that is what you'd be looking for. Now we're gonna get into the powders on this side so that you can see the difference between both. So mine is not in a conventional component. It would typically be in a pot, and you would use an angled brush like so to apply it. I'm really gonna apply it that way just so you can see, but this one actually comes with the wand already, which is convenient, but the tip I'm gonna teach you works better with a brush like this. I'm gonna take it from here. So imagine this would be your pan of product. You see that powder? I'm gonna actually tap off the excess of that powder. Now, the tip that I can give you for brow powder is to actually apply the brush, the angle brush, flat on its side first. So instead of applying it to create hair-like strokes, I actually like to apply it as a flat line first. And I like to brush up. Because that line, that angular line from your brush is going to help you to create the base. So powders, even though they're not created to necessarily give you super like defined brows all the time, you can still use your brush to kind of give you that effect all on your own. And again, you can go in with concealer at the end and clean that up. So I like to go in this way first. So you see I'm already starting to define and fill in that like kind of gapping area there. So now that I've done that, same thing with this side. I like to fill in my tail and get that situated. So remember, my tail is a little bit short naturally from what my tail should be. So I'm gonna extend that out with the powder. Extend that out there. And I'm gonna continue to fill in. So now I am using it like at an angle. And I'm gonna continue to fill in until I have my desired effect. Okay. Taking the spoolie of my angle brush and brushing that through. And then I'm gonna come to the front. I have my angle brush completely upside down here. I'm gonna take it upward and start to fill in the front. Okay, and then I'm going back in with my spoolie, smoothing that out. This would be the comparison of a brow gel versus a brow powder. As you see, the effect is pretty similar. You're gonna get a naturally fuller looking brow, but nothing too harsh, nothing too bold. So these are both great for a natural day or no makeup day, and when you are just getting into brow products, because they're super easy to use. Okay, so now we're gonna get into pomades and pencils. So we're gonna start with pencils. So there are typically gonna be two types of pencils. I have a fine tip one here with the spoolie, and an angular tip one here like this. Those types of products are gonna be really convenient because you have the product and kind of a tool all in one. Whereas a pomade is a little bit different. A pomade is actually going to come as a clay like this in a pot. and you would use that with your brush that looks like that. So the same one you would use for a powder, you would use for this, anything in a pot form. And you would use that to distribute the product. So we're gonna go over pencil and dip brow on either brow so you can see the comparison between both. So we know our brow ratio. We know that for me in particular, I'm a little bit short out here. So you consider whatever you found within your brow ratio and how it pertains to your preference. I'm gonna go in with the fine tip pencil today, and I'm going to first feather my brows in the direction of hair growth. So some people's hair grows up, some people's hair grows out, some people's hair goes down. Whichever way your hair grows, always groom those hairs in place first so you can really see where you need the most amount of product. So with brow pencils like this that are fine tip, I actually like to go in right where I'm sparse, which is right in here. And I like to go in and define that part first. And fill her in, again, upwards. I'm following the direction of hair growth. So upwards for me. And I'm going to follow that downward. Remember, I'm carrying it out because my brow needs to stop further down here, okay? So I'm gonna go in and fill in that part of my brow. I like to fill in that part of my brow first. And then I'm gonna carry that towards the front of my brow and fill upwards.
And know you thought while I looked into your eyes as the cars passed by. Those were damn good times, man. I wish I could.
I'm gonna make sure that I blend in whatever product that I'm applying and filling in, just to make sure I'm not applying too much product. So I'm gonna diffuse some of that product throughout my brow. So as you can see, the base of my brow is really defined. So now we want to build that same consistency on the top. So if you can see right up here, I have a pretty even line, but right in here, right where my arch is supposed to extend out, it's kind of like chopped. I'm gonna take that line that I naturally have and extend it out, because remember my arch is supposed to be like right there. Space there, that's where you need to fill in. So that's why knowing your brow ratio is really important, because had I not known, I probably would have started my arch like up here, and that's way too early when really it should be right here, and I actually have sparseness there that I need to account for. I'm going to fill that in, and I'm going to brush it through just to blend it. So you see how that already is giving me so much more structure to my brow, just making sure that I really made sure that that arch alignment got filled in properly, and it really elevated the whole structure of my brow. So I'm gonna come back to the front and fill in the front of my brow.
The vibe. And if I pulled up, I know she'd still be down to ride, but I got too much pride to turn down.
And now we're gonna just brush through and really diffuse everything that we did. All right, so as you see, this is my filled in brow. Now I typically go in and clean up and slim down my brows with concealer. So that's what we'll do at the end. But for now, say you're not someone who uses concealer, say this is all that you would do. This would be the effect. So now we're gonna get into brow pomade. So brow pomades are probably the one brow product that I get the most questions about, because brow pomades can be a little bit intimidating to people. Even though they need the same amount of products as a powder, because a pomade is a lot more pigmented, people feel intimidated about the pigmentation, the lack of control, and like putting too much too fast. And so those are the ones that I get the most questions about, or the most concerns, if they already have it and they feel like they're not getting the result, or if they're considering buying something like this. So I'm gonna talk a little bit about pomades and how to get them to work to your advantage. So the thing that I like to do with my pomades is I actually don't like necessarily just wipe it from here and put it on my brow. I take an intermediate step and actually put it on the top, as you can see here. The top of the jar is actually where I wipe off a lot of my product. So this is the tip that I would say will make and break your initial pomade application.
Wipe it down, wipe it down, won't you wipe it down, won't you wipe it down,
It's so easy, you can do.
Grab as little as you can and then wipe that off. Because again, you can always add more, but once you put too much, it's a lot harder to fix. So we're gonna follow the same mechanism that we kind of followed with the powder, but we're gonna be a lot more precise because with brushes like this, once they get like product on them, the bristles actually get really thin, which is really nice, and you're able to make those really precise hair-like strokes with this as well as gaining some definition. So again, for me, my sparseness is here. That's where I'm gonna start. And I'm gonna follow the really good definition of my base that I have here. And I'm going to actually carry that out. And I'm using very light pressure. You see how much product that I already deposited? You know, I leave a lot of this stuff. So now that I have that line there, what I'm going to do is start to push that product into my brow.
Every time I roll through your city.
And then I'm going to distribute that through, because remember, we don't want any harshness. You want to break up that product. So that's what I have going right now. Then I'm going to take that line that I kind of continue from the base of the front of my brow and continue it on to the tail. And I'm going to fill in my brows that way as well. Remember, I'm using very little product. Grabbing a little bit more product. I'm just filling in that tail. Remember, extending it out because my tail is a little bit short of what my ratio tells me it should be. Okay? So now I'm filling that in and I am brushing it through. So now we're going to go ahead and define the top of the brow. So again, my arch naturally is supposed to come out a little bit more.
Whenever I pass your exit, I think about all the
And I'm connected with that tail.
I was the one you'd express it to. I guess the whip just to chill with you. We go get food and just park right there on the
Remember, don't forget to brush that stuff through. And once you get that arch in there, it makes your brow so much easier to see. So now I'm gonna take residual product and I'm going to fill in the front of my brow because I see that it's a little bit lower than I would like. And I'm gonna turn that angle brush upside down and fill in the front with very light hair strokes.
I'm reminded of you every time.
Okay, so this is the brow with brow pomade. So you see it can be very natural. You don't have to be afraid of the pigmentation. Just understand that pomades are meant to be used sparingly, and this is a great investment because there's so much product in here. This is like literally carving out like, I don't know how many pencils and putting it all in one pot. So this is a great option. You just have to be patient, and it does take a little bit more time than a pencil, but you can still get a very natural effect with a brow pomade. You can also get a very defined effect with a brow pomade if you feel like you are lacking in brow hairs, you can really create those brow hair like strokes and it will still look just as natural. So now I'm gonna go ahead and actually clean up my brows with concealer. So this is gonna be very important because if you struggle with application, concealer is gonna make it like you never made a mistake, girl, like you're a pro. So I have my concealer and my brush. I really like this particular brush or brushes like this because it's flat, but it's also angled. So this really helps when you're getting up under the brow and creating that really crisp line, which I like. So we're gonna do that today. I'm gonna put some of this concealer on the back of my hand. I'm going to take some from the glob. I'm not gonna completely dip my brush into the glob because you don't want too much product. And I'm gonna dip it just to get that concealer brush really flat. That's gonna be really essential for keeping the bristles in place so they create that line that you're looking for. So I'm actually gonna start right in here. I'm gonna start to slowly underline. And I'm going to take it towards the front and I'm gonna clean that up a little bit. Now, because I wear my brows pretty dark, because I typically wear my hair black, and I use like a black brown most of the time, I like to make sure that my brows aren't pointing downward because sometimes that can make them look very like aggressive and harsh. So I like to carry my concealer literally straight out from my brow. I'm gonna grab a little bit more. And now we're gonna go into the arch. So the arch is really important because this is somewhere where people can kind of slip up and either take away all the shape that they created. So the arch area is a very important place to pay attention to. So what I'm gonna do is take this brush and right where that line stops going out this way, I'm going to take that angled brush and angle it out this way. That's why I like these brushes because they already kind of create that angle for you. And remember, I have very little product left on my brush. I'm literally just carrying it out, straight out. Okay, so I've defined the base of my brow, so you see that there. I like to use a concealer that's a little bit lighter than my skin tone because it helps to create that effect of a lifted brow and like the new skin that you would have like if you were to freshly get a wax on the brow. So that's why I like it there. So I'm gonna take some more concealer now. And I'm going to make sure that my angle of my brush is completely parallel to the angle of the bottom. This is really important in the direction that your brow grows and your ratio. And keeping the same thickness throughout your brow so that it doesn't look inconsistent. So I'm gonna keep that angle parallel and I'm gonna start right here. I never start at the front of my brow. And I'm gonna carry that line straight out. Straight out. I'm not gonna curve it down just yet. You see how these lines are both parallel? That is very important when you're cleaning up your brows because you don't wanna take off too much, take off your arch, make your brow here look thinner or thicker than what it's supposed to be or what you wanted it to be when you first filled in. So having those angles of those lines be completely parallel is very important. Imagine just two lines cutting through your brows like that. I'm gonna have that line going straight out. The reason why I do that is so I don't curve too early and then cut off the height of my arch. So the same way that I did the bottom and I took it out until I got to where the arch is, now I'm gonna curve it down and I'm gonna slowly start to carve that out.
Good times, man, I wish I could press rewind.
Woo, yes. That is what we want. We want a defined tail. We want to keep our arch, but we want to clean up that shape. And even if you got overzealous with the application and your brow ended up being thicker than what it was, you can use concealer to take down the width, I guess, of your brow. And then I'm gonna brush my brow hairs upward. And then I'm gonna do the other side, and then we're gonna come back and talk about brow gel at the end, and then tips. Another tip I forgot to tell you guys is if you get really harsh in the front, I always like to take my concealer, whatever residual is left, and kind of brush it through the front of my brows. Kind of gives the emulation that you went lighter even though you didn't. And then I'll just take my spoolie and like brush it through, and boom. That's a good way to fix if you got a little bit too harsh in the front of your brow. But these are the two brows, compared brow pencil and brow pomade, both concealed and defined with like a highlight shade of concealer. So what I like to do at the end of either one of these is I will take my brow gel, go through and brush my brow hairs up, and then I will take it and brush them down.
Reminiscing about her and me, yeah. I loved you, I loved you. What could we be?
So the last thing I want to get into is actually tips to use with these brow products. If you're oily in the hot, seasons like summer, that's literally right around the corner, I actually will do all this, and then at the end of my makeup application, I will actually powder my brows. And then if you are dry or your pomade has dried out, I also like to add a couple drops of oil to my brow pomade, and I actually did that recently, and that'll reconstitute the lipids in the formula so that it's more malleable, and it literally works just like new, like you saw here. I've had this for longer than I needed to, okay? But it works just fine with a little bit of oil. All right, you guys, so that is it. Thank you so much for tuning in, and just remember, I got you.